Greetings, friends. Today we have both some good news and some extremely bad news. The bad news is that the United States of America has suspended part of its military aid to Ukraine. But let's start with the good news. The conflict between Azerbaijan and the so-called Russia is escalating.
And the diplomatic conflict between Moscow and Baku.
At the same time, Russian officials are playing dumb and pretending not to understand what's going on. Why is Azerbaijan responding to the so-called Russia over the killing of Azerbaijanis?
We are building such relations with Azerbaijan, taking into account mutual interests and showing respect. There is so much that connects us.
Everything was going so well, there was partnership, there was friendship. And then the damned Azerbaijanis decided to respond to Russian crimes. And now even Solovyev is threatening them with war.
Do you want to go to war? I am sure that not a single sane and sober-minded person living in Azerbaijan would ever stoop to such foolishness.
But everything that is happening now between the so-called Russia and Azerbaijan is very telling. The Russians started it first, but when the response came, they couldn't take the hit.
It's telling.
And in order for the Russians not to be able to withstand the blow at the front and for as many occupiers as possible to be eliminated by our defenders, your donation to the current Russories is needed right now.
Equipment and Russian forces will be burning more and more often. Donate to Russories.
All the payment details are, as always, in the description of this video. Our soldiers are really counting on your help, so once again I'm asking you to donate. Especially since we have over 100 requests still pending. Donating to Russories is extremely important, and subscribing to my channel is less important. Do it. So the level of confrontation between Azerbaijan and the so-called Russia is rising. Let me remind you that it all started when, a few days ago in Yekaterinburg, Russian police carried out a pogrom against Azerbaijanis. They detained them, kidnapped them, tortured them, and killed two.
A wild hysteria broke out. Anti-Russian hysteria in Azerbaijan itself. Now, this wave of hatred is spreading.
In response, Azerbaijan decided to answer the Russians and put them in their place. And they did the right thing. The Russians, meanwhile, are pretending that they have no idea what caused this, why it all suddenly started. Well, so what if Russian cops killed Azerbaijanis?
And there was a fatal outcome among those detained. I apologize, and I want to emphasize once again, without going into details or nuances, because this falls under the jurisdiction of law enforcement agencies.
Zakharova refers to the killing of Azerbaijanis as a fatal outcome during detention and deliberately avoids giving any details. Because if you talk about the details, the bodies of the murdered Azerbaijanis show signs of torture and beating.
We found a large number of injuries both during the external and internal examinations.
So these Russian devils attacked the Azerbaijanis, killed two of them, and now the Russians are pretending they have nothing to do with it. They have no idea what's going on, what the problem is after all. Friendship is so important, and someone who knows who wants to drive a wedge between them.
Indeed, fostering friendly relations is extremely important and truly beneficial. And those individuals who deliberately seek to ruin or undermine them should really pause and think very carefully about the significant consequences of their actions and what they are doing.
It's quite an interesting situation. So then apparently this means that power in the so-called Russian Federation has been seized by hostile agents who forced Russian cops to attack Azerbaijanis. And moreover, they continue to provoke, because just yesterday Russian cops again attacked and detained Azerbaijanis. Among Russian provocateurs, among Russian patriot celebrations have begun. It's practically a national holiday.
Russia decided not to stay silent, not to wipe it off, but to deliver its own response. Finally, they stopped putting up with it and went on the offensive.
But they didn't take into account one very important detail. There are still a lot of Russians in Azerbaijan, so the exchange pool has been replenished. The Azerbaijani police have detained another batch of Russians. They are being charged with distributing prohibited substances in the country. The police did this in a very demonstrative way. Then the court sent them to a pre-trial detention center for 4 months. And honestly, it's quite satisfying to watch this footage. The Russians are coming. The propagandists have been caught out again. They lack any causal connections, so they said it's unclear why and for what reason these Russians were detained.
Today, strange and baseless raids on Russians in Baku will continue.
Skabeyeva's temporarily alive husband asks, why do this? For what purpose? Why? Why all this demonstrative cruelty?
For some reason, they were forced to walk in a squat. They were humiliated. What's the point of this demonstrative harshness?
This demonstrative cruelty is necessary because Russians don't understand any other language, because Russians themselves were the first to show it, because it was the Russians themselves who called for even greater cruelty.
The Russian police should press them so incredibly hard that blood literally comes out of their eyes. A truly horrifying sight.
While Azerbaijan is simply acting in a mirror-like fashion, they are treating Russians the way Russians treat Azerbaijanis, with the difference being that Azerbaijanis haven't killed Russians. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the so-called Russian Federation is outraged and is calling on Azerbaijan not to interfere in the country's internal affairs, because, after all, those Azerbaijanis were detained and killed according to Russian law. And Azerbaijan responds in kind, calling on Russia not to interfere in Azerbaijan's internal affairs. This whole story deals a serious blow to the geopolitical position of the so-called Russian Federation and to its image. And the Russians are starting to lose their allies in the Caucasus. They have already, in fact, lost Armenia, now even Azerbaijan, about which they used to say this.
Azerbaijan, which today is our
strategic partner, Azerbaijan, which never lets us down in any way. And the esteemed president of Azerbaijan, Ilham Haydarovich Aliyev, is indeed the most reliable and trustworthy leader.
Now is not reliable anymore. Russian propagandists are now openly threatening Azerbaijan, just as they threatened Ukraine on the eve of the full-scale invasion.
That, with all due respect to Azerbaijan, its history, its traditions. If Russia so much as raises an eyebrow for a second, we raise an eyebrow and Ukraine will understand everything. And there's no need for any illusions. We'll take Kyiv. You want to go to war?
And besides the weakening of the so-called Russia's geopolitical position, this is also a huge national humiliation for Russians, because they're not used to this. They're used to attacking and not getting any response. But here you see some Azerbaijan response, and the Russians basically can't do anything to them, which hurts the Russians' pride even more.
The situation inside the Russian Federation is simply destabilizing. Yes, it's spinning out of control, going off the rails. Crisis, crisis, crisis.
The Russians can't attack Azerbaijan right now because they're busy with their war against Ukraine, and Aliyev is taking advantage of this, and he's right to do so. It's necessary to keep putting pressure on the Russians in Azerbaijan. Well, now, friends, let's talk about the bad news. A number of Western media outlets have reported that the United States of America has halted deliveries of some military aid to Ukraine, and we're talking specifically about critical items. This includes missiles for the Patriot and HIMARS systems, which we basically cannot replace. This means thousands of 155mm artillery shells. It also includes other missiles for air defense and more. The official reason given was that the United States currently needs these weapons more. This was also confirmed by the White House press secretary, who said that this decision was made to put America's interests first. It's not as if this comes as a surprise to us. We cannot rely on the United States right now. But just recently, Trump said that he would consider the issue of providing Ukraine with additional Patriots.
We'll see if we can make that possible. You know, they're very hard to get, and we need them too. We've supplied them to Israel, and they're very effective, 100% effective.
Can we replace the types of equipment that the United States has stopped supplying to Ukraine? In short, no. We cannot replace Patriot missiles, and we cannot replace HIMARS missiles. But we can partially compensate for the shortage of artillery and, to some extent, the shortage of certain air defense systems by investing more in FPV drones, which are already shooting down, among other things, Shaheeds. News from the United States is not a reason to give up. On the contrary, it is a reason to help the Ukrainian military even more, especially since we currently have an extraordinary number of requests. And over the past day, thanks to you, our soldiers have received another 310 new FPV drones.
The Artillery Reconnaissance Division of the 40th Separate Artillery Brigade, named after Grand Duke Vytautas, expresses immense gratitude to the Sternenko community and personally to Serhiy for providing these excellent fiber optic drones. Enemy equipment and Russian forces will be burning more and more often. Donate to Rusorizus. Glory to Ukraine.
Good health. We are the 5th of September Rate Assault Kyiv Brigade Strike Unmanned Aviation Systems Company. We thank the Sternenko community for FPV drones, which will soon accomplish their mission. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes.
Wishing you good health.
We are the operators of the Unmanned Systems Battalion of the 30th of September, a 8th Mechanized Brigade. We express our gratitude to the Sternenko community and Mr. Seri for providing us with 50 10-inch Rusoritas drones. Thank you for your ongoing support. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory, heroes!
We wish you good health. The 56th Separate Motorized Infantry Mariupol Brigade is on the line. We thank the Sternenko community for providing FPV drones, which we will use to strike enemy targets and bring the day of our victory closer. Glory to Ukraine.
Wishing you good health. We are the soldiers of the 128th Separate Mountain Assault Brigade Battalion of Unmanned Systems. We thank the Sternenko community and personally Serhiy Sternenko for providing 50 fly system drones. Together towards victory. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. Friends, with your help we are supplying the military with regular and fiber optic drones, anti-aircraft interceptor drones and Shahed interceptors. But in order to develop these projects, which is essential, we need more funds. I'll be honest, we need your support. So please keep supporting Ukraine's security and defense forces.